Opening. My friends, take a moment and listen closely. In this life, we often work tirelessly, chasing money, gathering possessions, piling them up as if they will last forever. But the truth is, everything we hold onto exists under the same law, impermanence. Nothing escapes it. Things arise, they stay for a while, and then they fade away. Just as a green leaf eventually turns yellow and falls to the ground, our own bodies slowly change, weaken, and age. And if even our very bodies are subject to change, how could money and material wealth possibly remain fixed and secure? Think about it. How often have you seen fortunes rise and fall? A booming business one year and bankruptcy the next. A person once wealthy and admired, suddenly struggling to start over. Life constantly reminds us that wealth is fragile, temporary, and beyond our full control. Yet many of us cling to it with desperate hands, as if money could protect us from the storms of life. But here's the paradox: it's not that money is bad. Money is a tool, a resource, a form of energy that allows us to exchange and create. The danger is when we mistake the tool for the treasure, when we let it guide our decisions, control our happiness, or dictate our sense of worth. If we don't understand impermanence, wealth can quietly enslave us, pulling us into endless worry and competition. Let me ask you, have you ever noticed how quickly joy from a new purchase fades? That excitement over the car, the house, the new phone, it feels incredible at first, but give it a little time, and suddenly the mind is restless again, craving the next thing. That's impermanence in action. Not only do the objects themselves deteriorate, but even the feelings we attach to them are fleeting. I once met a man who had lost nearly everything during an economic crash. He told me, "At first, I thought my life was over. My house, my savings, my investments, gone. But strangely, when all of that disappeared, I realized something. I was still here. My breath was still here. My relationships were still here. And slowly, I discovered a different kind of wealth, one that couldn't be touched by markets or banks." His story struck me deeply. It was a reminder that real security isn't built on what we own, it's found in how we relate to life itself. So perhaps the real question is not, how can I hold on to wealth forever, but rather, how can I live wisely, knowing that everything is changing? When we see impermanence clearly, we stop being tricked by the illusion of permanence. We begin to use money as it was meant to be used, to support life, to share, to create, to ease suffering. Instead of chasing endlessly, we learn how to pause, breathe, and ask, am I living fully right now? Or am I just chasing what will soon slip away? Because here's the gentle truth: happiness is never found in the next paycheck, the next promotion, or the next purchase. Happiness arises when the heart is free, when we are no longer bound by the fear of losing what we cling to. Wealth will change, possessions will come and go, but the wisdom of impermanence can give us something unshakable, the ability to live with peace, no matter what rises or falls. Impermanence is the truth. Impermanence. It might sound like a heavy word, but in reality, it's the most natural truth of life. Everything with form, everything we can touch, hold, or see, it all changes. Nothing stays the same. Think about money, possessions, even our own bodies. One day they are here, shining, strong, abundant. The next, they may fade, disappear, or be taken from us. Wealth today can turn into loss tomorrow. And no matter how tightly we hold on, nothing lasts forever. Now, this isn't meant to scare us. Impermanence is not a threat, it's not life punishing us. It's simply the way things are. It's a reminder, a teacher, and sometimes even a gift. Because when we deeply understand that everything changes, we stop clinging so desperately. We start living more awake, more present. Let's take an example. Imagine you're holding sand in your palm. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Wealth and possessions are just like that sand. We can enjoy them, use them, even appreciate them, but if we grip them too tightly, fear and suffering appear. Fear of losing. Fear of not having enough. And yet, despite all that holding on, impermanence continues its work. Look back at history. Empires have risen in glory, and then vanished into ruins. Families that once carried great fortunes sometimes end up with nothing in a few generations. Even the grandest buildings eventually crumble. If these massive, powerful structures couldn't resist change, how could the dollars in our wallet or the car in our driveway stand forever? Here's a question worth asking yourself. How often do we trade our peace of mind for things that won't last? Have you ever worked endless hours, stressed and exhausted, chasing money, only to realize later that the happiness it brought was fleeting? That's impermanence at work. It doesn't mean money is meaningless, but it means money alone cannot secure us a permanent happiness. When I first learned this truth, I remember feeling both shaken and liberated. Shaken, because I had to admit how fragile everything really is. But liberated, because I realized I no longer had to cling. I didn't have to live in the illusion that if I could just hold on tightly enough, I would be safe. Instead, I began to see the beauty in the ebb and flow of life. Impermanence is not an enemy, it's the very reason why flowers bloom, why seasons change, why we can grow and transform. If everything stayed fixed, there would be no spring after winter, no healing after pain, no second chances after mistakes. Impermanence is what allows life to renew itself. So when we look at money, possessions, or even the situations in our lives, the wisdom of impermanence tells us, don't get lost in trying to freeze them. Appreciate them while they are here. Use them well. But don't be deceived into thinking they will last forever. Because the moment we truly see that nothing lasts, we stop being ruled by fear of loss. We stop being blinded by greed. Instead, we begin to live with gratitude. We begin to ask ourselves, how can I live wisely in this moment, knowing that everything is temporary? And that is where freedom begins, not in holding on, but in letting go enough to live fully, right here and right now. Money is like the wind. Money is like the wind, it comes and it goes. Sometimes it arrives in abundance, filling our sails, making us feel secure and powerful. And then, just as quickly, it shifts direction, disappears, leaving us grasping at empty air. We've all seen it, one day, prosperity, the next, uncertainty. This is not failure. This is simply the nature of money, it was never meant to be permanent. Think about the wind for a moment. You can feel it on your skin, hear it rustle the trees, watch it carry clouds across the sky. But can you hold it in your hands? Can you trap it and keep it forever? No. The tighter you try to contain it, the faster it slips away. Money is no different. We can use it, direct it, even appreciate its presence, but the moment we cling to it as if it defines us, it begins to control us. Let me share a simple story. I once knew a man who built a successful business, made millions, and was celebrated in his community. But when the market shifted, everything collapsed. He confessed that the hardest part wasn't losing the money, it was losing his sense of self. He had mistaken wealth for identity. Without it, he felt invisible. That is what happens when we forget that money is like the wind, temporary, passing, never meant to be the foundation of who we are. Here's a question worth asking. Do we own our money, or does our money own us? If every decision we make is driven by fear of losing or hunger for more, then money is no longer our servant, it has become our master. But when we see it as a tool, something that flows through our hands rather than defines us, we regain our freedom. History itself whispers this truth. Fortunes have been won and lost overnight. Entire economies have risen, only to fall. Even the richest empires of the past couldn't hold onto their wealth forever. If money were truly secure, wouldn't someone, somewhere, have kept it for eternity? But no, like the wind, it always moves on. Yet this realization doesn't mean money is meaningless. Quite the opposite. It means we can use it wisely while it's here. Just as a sailor learns to adjust the sails to the shifting wind, we can learn to navigate life's financial ups and downs with wisdom. Instead of clinging, we can flow. Instead of panicking when the wind changes, we can adapt, remembering that no storm or season of abundance lasts forever. Personally, I've noticed that some of the happiest people I've met weren't those with the most money, but those with the healthiest relationship to it. They treated money like a visitor, welcomed it when it came, made use of it, shared it generously, but never chained their hearts to it. That freedom gave them a kind of wealth no bank could measure. So maybe the real challenge isn't, how do I hold on to money forever, but how can I live so that money supports me, without ruling me? When we hold it lightly, we can enjoy it without fear. We can give without regret. And we can rest easy, knowing that when the wind changes, as it always does, we will not be broken, but ready to adjust our sails and keep moving forward. Wealth is only borrowed. When we enter this world, we come with nothing but a breath. When we leave, we take nothing with us. Everything in between, the houses, the cars, the bank accounts, the land, even the titles and positions we hold, all of it is borrowed, never truly owned. We may sign our names on papers, carry deeds, or stack bills in safes, but in reality, we are just temporary caretakers. Think about it. The house you live in today once belonged to someone else, and one day it will belong to another. The clothes on your body will wear out. Even your most prized possessions, jewelry, art, heirlooms, will eventually change hands or fade away. What we often call mine is really just on loan from life. I remember attending a funeral years ago. The man had been wealthy, respected, and known for his success. His family drove expensive cars, his house was enormous, his business booming. But as I stood by his grave, watching the casket lower into the ground, the truth struck me, none of it came with him. Not $1, not one stone of his mansion. What remained were his actions, how he treated people, the generosity he showed, the love or pain he left behind. That was the real inheritance. And that raises a powerful question. If we can't take our wealth with us, then what are we truly building while we are here? Are we only stacking material bricks, or are we also building bridges of kindness, compassion, and integrity, things that actually last beyond our lifetime? This doesn't mean wealth is useless. In fact, when we understand it as borrowed, we start to use it more wisely. A borrowed tool isn't something you hoard in a closet, it's something you use carefully, respectfully, for a good purpose. The same is true with money and property. They can feed families, create opportunities, bring comfort, and relieve suffering. But if we cling to them, as if they define us, we live in constant fear of losing what was never truly ours. History teaches this lesson again and again. Great kings, powerful empires, magnates of industry, all of them had to leave everything behind. The pyramids of Egypt, the palaces of Europe, the skyscrapers of today, they remind us of human ambition, yes, but they also stand as monuments to impermanence. The people who built them are gone, their possessions scattered. Only their legacy, whether of wisdom or of greed, remains in our memory. On a personal level, I've noticed how freeing it feels to remember that everything is borrowed. When I remind myself that my possessions are not mine forever, I become less afraid of losing them, and more grateful while I have them. I take care of them, but I don't let them control me. I use them as tools to create meaning in the present moment. So maybe the deeper truth is this: wealth is not ownership, it's stewardship. We are stewards of what life places in our hands. And one day, we will pass it on, whether we want to or not. The only thing that truly follows us when we go is not the money we kept, but the way we lived, our choices, our kindness, our actions, our love. When we see wealth this way, life becomes lighter. Instead of fearing loss, we focus on using what we have for good. Instead of clinging, we share. And in that sharing, we discover a wealth that no one can take away. Suffering comes from attachment. Why does money so often feel like both a blessing and a curse? The answer lies in attachment. When our hearts cling tightly to wealth, when we wrap our identity, our security, even our happiness around it, fear begins to creep in. Fear of losing. Fear of not having enough. And where fear lives, suffering follows. Have you noticed how money can make people restless, even when they already have enough? One person worries endlessly about bills. Another spends sleepless nights protecting investments. A neighbor feels jealous when someone else upgrades their home or car. A friend works long hours, not because they need to, but because the thought of more has become irresistible. The tighter we hold, the heavier life feels. It's like gripping a rope too tightly. Sooner or later, it burns our hands. I once spoke with a woman who inherited a large sum of money. At first, she thought her problems were over. But soon she realized she was living in constant anxiety, afraid of spending too much, suspicious of who wanted to be close to her, and terrified of losing it all. She confessed, "The money gave me security on paper, but inside I've never felt more insecure." That's the paradox of attachment. The more we cling, the more fragile we feel. But here's the liberating truth. When we loosen our grip, life begins to open. Imagine holding a handful of water. If you squeeze too tightly, it slips away. But if you cup your hands gently, you can hold it long enough to drink, to refresh yourself, even to share. Wealth works the same way. Used wisely, with openness, it nourishes life. Held too tightly, it suffocates us. So ask yourself, do you possess your money, or does your money possess you? If your peace rises and falls with the numbers in your account, then perhaps money has already become the master. But if you can let it flow, come and go, without chaining your heart to it, then you have discovered true freedom. This doesn't mean giving up all possessions or living without responsibility. It means shifting the relationship. Instead of saying, "I must keep this forever," we begin to say, "I will use what I have wisely while it's here." That small change in mindset can lift an enormous weight. I've seen it happen. People who learn to let go, whether through generosity, simple living, or gratitude, walk through life lighter, like clouds drifting in the sky. They still work, they still care for their families, they still manage their finances. But their hearts are not chained to the constant, what ifs. Their wealth is a tool, not a prison. The Buddha once taught that craving and clinging are the roots of suffering. And today, thousands of years later, his words still hold true. We don't suffer simply because we have or don't have money, we suffer because of how tightly we cling to it. When we loosen that grasp, suffering loosens with it. So maybe the question isn't, how do I hold on to what I have, but rather, how do I live so fully that even if I lose, I remain at peace? That shift is where real wealth lies. Because at the end of the day, freedom is not found in possession, it's found in the courage to release, to trust, and to live with an open heart. Money itself is not evil. It is simply a tool, neutral, like a knife that can prepare a meal or cause harm, depending on the hands that wield it. The same dollar bill can either heal or hurt, depending on the intention behind its use. And this is where wisdom comes in. Think about it. When we use money to help someone in need, to support our family, to contribute to a cause that uplifts lives, that money transforms into something far greater. It becomes a seed of peace, a thread of compassion woven into the fabric of this world. But when money is used only to feed our endless desires, when it is spent to inflate ego, or when it becomes a weapon to dominate others, it ceases to serve us. It begins to chain us. Have you ever noticed how people who hoard wealth often live in more fear than those with little? The more they have, the more they cling, and the more fragile their happiness becomes. But those who view money as something to circulate, something to share, often sleep with lighter hearts. They understand that money is like water, it is meant to flow. When it stagnates, it spoils, when it moves, it nourishes. I once heard a story of a farmer who divided his harvest into 3 parts. 1 part to feed his family, 1 part to invest in his land, and 1 part to give to the community. He said, "The more I give, the more the earth gives back." And sure enough, while his neighbors constantly worried about loss, his heart was at peace, and his fields seemed to flourish year after year. The true abundance he experienced was not only in his crops, but in his spirit. So perhaps the real question is not, how much money do I have, but rather, how am I using the money I do have? Imagine if every dollar you spent was a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. Would you still buy the same things? Would you still invest in the same ways? Money in itself has no moral weight. It only reflects the consciousness of its owner. In the hands of a wise person, it becomes a bridge, connecting hearts, lifting burdens, planting seeds of kindness that can outlive them. In the hands of ignorance, it becomes a prison, locking the spirit in endless cycles of craving and dissatisfaction. We live in a culture that often tells us wealth equals freedom. But wisdom shows us a deeper truth. Freedom doesn't come from how much we accumulate, but from how lightly we hold what we have. When we let money serve compassion instead of greed, it no longer controls us. We guide it with purpose. So the next time you earn, spend, or give, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this choice adding weight to my chains, or wings to my soul? Because in the end, money will pass. But the intentions we plant with it, the kindness we spread through it, those will ripple far beyond our own lives. There is a quiet truth that many of us forget. Wealth only finds its deepest meaning when it is shared. The moment we give, something magical happens. Money transforms from mere numbers in a bank account into seeds of compassion, into blessings that ripple far beyond our own lives. Think about it. A single act of generosity can light up an entire world for someone. When you offer a meal to a hungry stranger, it is not just food, it is dignity. When you support the elderly, it is not only care, it is love made visible. And when you give a child the chance to learn, you are not just helping one life, you are shaping a future, perhaps even changing the destiny of generations to come. In Buddhism, this act of giving is called dana, the practice of generosity. But it's not only about charity, it's about liberation. Because the moment you let go and share, you break free from the chains of attachment. What you once feared to lose becomes something indestructible, merit, virtue, a kind of invisible wealth that no thief, no disaster, no passing of time can ever take away. I often think of generosity like a candle. When you use your flame to light another, your own flame doesn't grow smaller. It shines even brighter, and suddenly the darkness around you begins to fade. The more we share, the more luminous our own lives become. And here's something worth reflecting on. Have you ever noticed how people who give, even if they have little, often carry a certain lightness in their hearts? Meanwhile, those who hold tightly to what they have live with a constant undercurrent of fear, fear of losing, fear of scarcity. It's ironic, isn't it? That the act of giving, which seems like a loss, is actually the very thing that makes us feel most abundant. I remember a story of a woman who lived modestly her entire life. She never had great riches, but she made it her mission to help the children in her neighborhood, buying them school supplies, sharing meals, offering her time. When she passed away, hundreds of people came to her funeral. Many said, "She gave me hope when I had none." That was her true wealth, the kind that even death could not erase. So, perhaps the real measure of wealth is not in what we keep, but in what we release. Every time you share, you plant something eternal. You turn fleeting material things into lasting spiritual treasures. And in that act, you rise above impermanence. Ask yourself, if you had to leave this world tomorrow, what would remain? Would it be the possessions locked in your house? Or would it be the love you spread, the kindness you gave, the lives you touched? Sharing is not just charity. It is freedom. It is how we step beyond the cycle of gain and loss. It is how we transform temporary possessions into timeless blessings. So the invitation is simple: give when you can, however you can. Not just money, but time, presence, a listening ear, a kind word. Every act of generosity is a bridge that carries us beyond the fear of loss, into the freedom of love. Because in the end, what we share is the only wealth that truly lasts. Greed is like a fire, it never says enough. The more it consumes, the more it demands. Have you noticed how often, when people gain wealth, their hunger for more only grows? A new house soon feels too small. A bigger car becomes ordinary. That promotion at work brings joy for a moment, but quickly, the mind whispers, "What's next?" Buddhist wisdom compares greed to drinking salt water. At first, it may quench your thirst, but the more you drink, the thirstier you become. That is the trap of endless desire. It promises satisfaction, but only deepens the craving. Think about the culture we live in today. Advertisements surround us, whispering that happiness lies in the next purchase, the latest phone, the newest fashion, the bigger paycheck. And yet, so many who have it all still lie awake at night, restless, empty, wondering why peace feels so far away. Could it be because the fire of greed has burned away the very contentment they are searching for? I once knew a businessman who had built incredible success. From the outside, people admired him: beautiful house, luxury cars, endless opportunities. But in private, he confessed that he never felt at ease. Each milestone only fueled the pressure to achieve more. He said, "It's like chasing a horizon. The closer I think I get, the further it moves away." That is the exhausting nature of greed. It doesn't let us arrive, it keeps us running endlessly. But here's the truth: peace begins the moment we choose to stop running. When we pause, breathe, and recognize that enough is already here, the fire of greed loses its grip. We begin to see beauty in simplicity: a meal shared with loved ones, a quiet morning walk, the joy of helping someone without expecting anything in return. Ask yourself honestly, how much do you really need to live well, to feel fulfilled? What if happiness has less to do with adding more, and more to do with appreciating what is already present? When we understand this, desire transforms into gratitude, and greed gives way to generosity. Imagine living not with a restless hunger, but with a calm heart, free from the endless chase. That is true wealth. Because wealth is not about how much we accumulate, but how much peace we carry inside. So, the invitation is simple: notice the fire of greed within yourself. Don't feed it with endless wanting. Instead, feed your heart with gratitude, kindness, and presence. The moment you learn to say, "This is enough," you will discover a joy that no amount of money could ever buy. Greed is a fire. Gratitude is the water that cools it. The choice is always in your hands. What does it truly mean to be wealthy? For many, wealth is measured in numbers, in bank accounts, houses, cars, or the size of one's business. Yet, if we look closely, history and even our own lives show us something deeper. True wealth is not outside, but within. Imagine someone who owns millions, yet cannot sleep at night. Their heart is restless, their mind is consumed with fear, fear of losing, fear of not having enough, fear of others taking what they hold. Does that sound like the life of a rich person? Or does it resemble poverty in disguise, poverty of peace, poverty of joy? Now, contrast that with someone who has little by worldly standards. Their home may be small, their possessions few. Yet when you meet them, their smile is genuine, their presence calm, their kindness overflowing. They give freely, not because they have much, but because their heart feels full. Isn't that a kind of richness that money could never buy? The Buddha once taught that the greatest wealth is contentment. When we know how to say, "This is enough," we open the door to freedom. Because no matter how much we own, if we are always reaching for more, we will live in scarcity. And no matter how little we have, if gratitude fills our heart, we will live in abundance. Think about your own life. How many times have you thought, if I just get this one thing, this new job, this new home, this raise, then I'll finally feel secure? And yet, when that moment arrived, how long did the satisfaction really last? True wealth cannot be found in chasing, because the horizon always moves farther away. Real wealth is in the mind that knows peace. It's in the heart that practices compassion. It's in the spirit that can sit quietly, breathe deeply, and feel at home in the present moment. That kind of wealth cannot be stolen, cannot be lost in the stock market, cannot be diminished by age. It grows stronger the more it is shared. I remember meeting an elderly woman in a small village during my travels. She owned almost nothing, her clothes were simple, her home modest. But she welcomed me with tea, a smile, and a warmth that filled the entire space. When I left, I realized she had given me something no millionaire ever had, an authentic sense of being cared for. That was her richness. So the question is not, how much do I own, but how full is my heart? Wealth outside us may come and go, but the wealth within, peace, compassion, gratitude, that is the treasure no change in fortune can touch. True wealth is not counted in dollars. It is measured in presence, in kindness, in the ability to rest easy at night with a heart unburdened. That is the richness that endures. Every time you hold money in your hand, pause for just a moment. Look at it closely, not as a symbol of power, not as a guarantee of security, but as something fleeting. Imagine whispering to yourself, "This too will pass. One day, it will be gone." At first, this thought may feel uncomfortable. After all, society trains us to cling to wealth, to equate it with safety and worth. But when we remember impermanence, when we see that money will eventually slip away no matter how tightly we grasp it, something shifts inside us. We begin to loosen our attachment. We stop fearing its loss, and we stop idolizing its gain. This is the practice of living mindfully with money. Not rejecting it, not worshipping it, but understanding it for what it is, a tool, a temporary companion, not a lasting treasure. Let me ask you, how often have you been stressed about money? Maybe lying awake at night, calculating bills, or worrying about investments. Or perhaps, on the other side, feeling euphoric after a financial gain, only to find that the high doesn't last. Both joy and fear tied to money are fragile, because their source is fragile. When we remember impermanence, we realize that clinging to either side only brings suffering. Buddhist wisdom invites us to look at money as if it were water in our hands. Hold it gently, and you can drink, share, and nourish life. Grip it too tightly, and it slips through your fingers. Isn't that the truth we've all experienced in some way? I once spoke with a friend who had lost almost everything in a financial crisis. He told me, at first, I felt destroyed. But then I realized, I hadn't lost myself. My family was here, my health was here, and strangely, I felt lighter than before. That awakening didn't come from gain, but from seeing through the illusion of permanence. When we look at money with the eyes of impermanence, something beautiful happens. We start to use it more wisely. Instead of hoarding, we share. Instead of chasing endlessly, we choose with care. Instead of fearing loss, we invest in what truly matters: relationships, compassion, peace of mind. So next time you pay a bill, make a purchase, or even receive your paycheck, pause and reflect. This too is impermanent. Don't let that truth scare you, let it free you. Because the moment you no longer see money as your master, you reclaim your own freedom. Awareness of impermanence doesn't make life bitter, it makes life precious. It teaches us to live awake, to appreciate every dollar not as something to cling to, but as an opportunity to use well before it inevitably passes. In this way, impermanence becomes a gift, not a threat. It teaches us to live with clarity, gratitude, and freedom in every choice we make. Happiness beyond wealth. Have you ever noticed how quickly the thrill of getting something new fades away? That new car smell, the latest phone, the bonus in your bank account. At first, it feels like happiness. But after a while, the excitement dissolves, and we begin looking for the next thing. This cycle keeps us running, yet never truly arriving. Buddhism reminds us of a simple but powerful truth: real happiness isn't found in gold, in possessions, or in the balance of our bank account. It's found in a heart that is free from clinging. When we begin to see the impermanent nature of money and material things, we realize they can bring comfort, but never true contentment. Think about it: if happiness were in wealth alone, then every millionaire should be deeply fulfilled. But we know that isn't true. Some of the wealthiest people carry deep anxiety, sleepless nights, and endless dissatisfaction. On the other hand, many people with modest means live with radiant joy, because their hearts are not imprisoned by endless craving. True happiness comes when the mind no longer depends on possessions to feel whole. Imagine living in such a way that whether your pockets are full or empty, your heart remains steady and light. That is the freedom the Buddha pointed to. It's like owning an invisible treasure chest, one that never runs out, because it isn't filled with money, but with peace, compassion, and wisdom. I remember once meeting an elderly man who had lost nearly everything in a financial collapse. Strangely, he wasn't bitter. He said, "I lost the house, I lost the car, but I never lost my smile. Because I never placed my happiness inside those things." His words struck me deeply. He had found a kind of wealth that could never be stolen. So let me ask you, where do you place your happiness? Is it in things that can vanish overnight, like money, status, or possessions? Or is it rooted in something deeper, something no market crash, no job loss, no aging process can take away? When we touch the truth of impermanence, craving softens. We begin to use money wisely, not as a source of identity, but as a tool to support life, to care for others, and to create opportunities for compassion. Suddenly, even a simple meal with loved ones feels like a feast, and a quiet evening becomes a sanctuary. The wisdom of impermanence doesn't make life bleak, it makes it precious. When we stop chasing after wealth as the key to happiness, we finally have the space to notice the richness already here, the warmth of friendship, the miracle of breath, the joy of giving. Happiness beyond wealth is not a distant ideal, it's available right now, in the way we see, in the way we let go, in the way we live each day with presence. And the greatest treasure of all is this unshakable freedom, to walk through life empty-handed, yet overflowing with peace. Closing, the true treasure of life. My friends, life is fleeting, like morning dew on a leaf, shining for a moment before disappearing in the sun. Wealth, possessions, and status may seem solid, but in truth, they are like drifting clouds, appearing and vanishing without warning. The question is, will we spend our short time here clinging to clouds, or will we open our hearts to something more enduring? The Buddha's teaching on impermanence is not meant to make us fearful. It is meant to wake us up. When we remember that everything passes, we stop taking things for granted. We stop letting money blind us, and we begin to see life with fresh eyes. Think about it. How often do we chase after wealth as though it could shield us from suffering, or buy us freedom from aging, sickness, and death? Yet no amount of money has ever stopped time. What money can do, at best, is support us, give us food, shelter, comfort. But what truly sustains the heart is something far deeper: compassion, mindfulness, and the wisdom to know what matters most. I once heard someone say, at the end of life, nobody wishes they had worked more overtime. They wish they had loved more deeply, given more freely, and lived more peacefully. And isn't that true? When we reflect honestly, we see that the treasure of life has never been in the numbers on a screen. It has always been in the quality of our presence, in the peace of our mind, in the kindness we share. So let me ask you, what kind of treasure are you building right now? One that disappears the moment you let go of it, or one that grows the more you give it away? True wealth is not measured in coins or possessions, but in the freedom of a heart that doesn't depend on them. When the mind is steady, when we know how to stop, to breathe, to live in awareness, we discover a treasure that cannot be stolen, cannot be lost, and cannot be destroyed by time. And here lies the great paradox: the less we cling, the more abundant we feel. When we release the grip of craving, life suddenly becomes enough. This breath, this meal, this conversation, this simple act of kindness. All of it is rich. All of it is sacred. So, remember this: life is short, wealth is fleeting, but peace of mind is timeless. The greatest gift we can give ourselves and others is to live with awareness, to share generously, and to let our hearts rest in freedom. When we no longer depend on money to define our worth, when we can stand in stillness amidst gain and loss, that is when we uncover the real treasure, the treasure of awakening, of freedom, of a joy that no circumstance can take away. May you walk this path with courage. May your days be filled with presence, your heart with compassion, and your spirit with peace. That is the true wealth, the lasting treasure, waiting for you here and now.